Ah, the age of exploration, where European ships were zipping around the ocean blue in the 1400s to the 1800s. Why, you ask, were there on these expeditions? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are many interwoven reasons why the Europeans wanted to explore, and more importantly, there were many effects of this exploration, felt not only in Europe. In fact, these blue water explorations led the Europeans to the discovery of the Americas.
Alright, so first, the Europeans, they wanted spices. Yes, those things filled in little bottles that your mom has in her kitchen counter. Yeah, we all know. Spices were prized goods in the Middle Ages. They were already being traded within existing colonies in Europe, but they wanted more. More, more, more. So what's so important about these spices? It just stemmed a whole area, selling near to them? You guys ask such good questions.
One widely told explanation for the medieval demand of spices was that they covered the taste of spoiled meat. Disgusting, but I guess it's whatever. Spices was more expensive than meat, and fresh meat was available. As suggested by the records of local ordinances that prohibited butchers from throwing away unwanted animal parts and blood in the streets. However, refrigeration wasn't available, and some hot spices have been shown to be used as antibacterial agent. Salting, smoking, or drying the meat were other means of this preservation.
Most spices used in cooking began as medical ingredients, and throughout the Middle Ages, spices were used as both medicines and condiments. Above all, medieval recipes involved a combination of medical and food folklore, as we say, in order to balance food's healthy benefits and to prevent disease. Inventories and account books of pharmacies show that such spices such as pepper, cinnamon, and ginger were sold in many varieties and in different medical prescriptions.
Very interesting, Jacob. The demand for these spices was great because they were used to strongly flavored food, believed to have medical properties, but they also allowed people to have this sense of well-being, refinement, and health. They created a markedly elite status, as well as markers of exquisite taste for those that acquire them. Yes, having those little bottles of spices that are in your mom's cabinet that everybody has showed you were elite and showed you could be held to the highest status in the world for just having a spice.
So the demand of their acquisition become greater. Prices and availability of the spices were affected by global factors such as weather and Christian and Muslim relationships. Also, most of the spices at the time were found in China, Asia, and India. It was very difficult to get the spices from Asia to Europe. The spices had to be brought across the thousands of miles of rugged mountain terrains and deserts. Robbers waited in the mountains to rob the spice caravans. People wanted to find new ways to get them, and ocean travel became the prize mode.
Now you may be asking yourself, were spices the only reason for these explorations? And the answer to that is no. So was the need for gold, silver, and other precious stones. During this time period, Europe had fought many very expensive wars. They fought each other, which is never smart, and against the Turkish Empire. These wars were very expensive, so they needed to find ways to pay for them. One way was to find gold, silver, and other precious stones worth lots of money. So they set out to find those areas that were rumored to have them.
See right here, I got some silver, so that means I'd be pretty rich back then. I also got some gold in my teeth, so I'd be really well made. So another reason for explanation, pure curiosity. Everyone just wants to go and adventure and go to new ways. The Europeans made maps of this time, contained in Europe, Asia, and the top of Africa. That's it. That sense of curiosity got the best of them. They heard stories of other faraway lands, and those with the greatest sense of adventure wanted to find them. Countries also wanted to find this land to claim it as theirs, such as colonies. Rulers, especially kings of Spain and Portugal, wanted larger empires. They wanted to expand their land and take the natural resources on the new territory as their own. Cha-ching! Money! They wanted to be rich. Wait, that's two reasons. Curiosity rulers. Okay, yeah. Curiosity rulers wanted new lands as theirs to enlarge their power and acquire the vast wealth from the resources found on land.
Nevertheless, many explorers set out to discover the New World. Here are just a few of the more famous ones. We have Bartolome Diaz, a Portugal explorer who sailed around the southernmost tip of Africa in 1488. This opened the door for trade with India. Quite unfortunate, in 1500 he was lost at sea trying to go around Africa again. Then you have Ferdinand Magellan, who sailed around the world. That was a first.
And you have Christopher Columbus, controversial guy to say the least. You heard the story. I'm sure that he convinced the Spanish monarch to finance his journey to sail west across the Atlantic Ocean to get Asia, and not around the very, very large continent of Africa like the Portuguese sailors were doing. So, as the little ditty goes, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. He encountered many hardships and eventually landed on present-day Caribbean islands, Bahamas, and Hispaniola. That's a tongue twister there, folks. He sailed across the Central and South America coast. He found people who lived on the islands, but not much riches. He didn't even reach Northern America, where Native Americans already lived. Here's where things get a little, as you say, ugly. He was not too nice to the natives of the islands. Because he couldn't find riches and spices to send back to the Spanish king and queen, he sent 500 slaves as a present. That did not go over very well, and the queen sent them back. Things continued to go not as planned for Christopher Columbus, and his dream of fame and glory did not materialize. However, Columbus and his journeys continued to fuel a wave. Get it? Wave? Of exploration. His journey also fueled a wave of exploitation, that of slavery.
Christopher Columbus, very terrible person. This is where matters take a turn for the worse. Slavery had been in existence in parts of Europe and Africa for centuries before all this age of discovery and exploration. In Africa, some countries would enslave people as punishment of a crime. Some people became slaves when they captured in a battle as punishment for not paying debt. Pay your debt, Sophia. You don't want to be a slave. Sorry. My historian's part got a hold of me right there. Some enslaved people could buy their freedom back. Children were not automatically made a slave if their parents were. Once the Europeans became involved, things changed drastically. When the Portuguese began showing up on the coast of West Africa, map time.
Is it that one?
Alright. They learned more about that money could be made by showing up on the coast of West Africa. They learned that money could be made by transporting slaves to Muslim merchants. At the same time, the Portuguese began transporting slaves to what the fuck? At the same time, the Portuguese began sending American slaves to Europe to work in cities. They also established sugar plantations on tiny islands off the coast of Africa where they needed laborers. Soon, the Dutch and English got on slave money and began trading Africans for goods.
Europeans had slaves on their own expedition boats to these new regions. Why? Well, they needed a workforce. They needed people to work in the new colonies in the new land. The Spanish brought them to Hispaniola to work on sugar plantations and in gold mines. As the Europeans introduced large-scale productions of indigo, cotton, sugar, rice, and tobacco, more and more slaves were brought to the Americas for work. Slavery increased into the millions. Slavery in Africa was a form of punishment. The main ways to enslave Africans were being taken prisoner in an internal African war, raiding, kidnapping, and being convicted of crime, or not paying some debts. Well, some African rulers were more than willing to offer up their people as slaves in return for money. Other rulers were solidly against the selling of others for
Alright, so look, you got your triangle. You got your Europe, Africa, America. Europe gives Africa manufactured goods. Africa gives America slaves, bad slaves. America gives Europe the goods that the slaves made. So the money goes round in a triangle form. This part, Europe. This part, Africa. This part, America. Triangle power.